I've always loved the quiet suburb I moved to 5 years ago. I'm David Wilson. It was the perfect escape from the city, a place to focus on my hobbies. Gardening, woodworking, the usual DIY stuff. The neighborhood is picture perfect, trimmed lawns, cute houses, tree-lined streets. But underneath, there was this tension, mostly thanks to the HOA president, Carol. Carol was infamous. Overbearing, strict, always sticking her nose where it didn't belong. She used the HOA rules like a weapon. I mostly stayed under her radar, keeping to myself, taking care of my property. I followed the rules when they made sense, but I wasn't going to obsess over every little detail like she did. Then, one Saturday morning, my peaceful existence blew up. I'm in the kitchen, enjoying my coffee, when bam, bam, loud knocking. I open the door, and there's Carol, with 2 HOA board members, Steve and Brenda, standing behind her. Carol's got this serious look, her lips tight, wearing her usual power suit, clipboard in hand. She just radiated authority. "Good morning, David," she says, not even waiting for me to invite them in. "We've had some complaints about activity on your property, specifically your garage." I blinked, totally caught off guard. "Good morning, Carol. What kind of complaints?" She looks at her clipboard like she's reading an official report. "Several neighbors have reported unusual deliveries and strange noises coming from your garage at night. We need to inspect it to make sure there are no HOA violations or safety hazards." I stared at her. "Unusual deliveries? Strange noises? Carol, I'm not running a rave in there. It's a garage. I work on projects. Sometimes I get supplies delivered. What are you suggesting?" Her tone gets sharper. "I'm not suggesting anything, David. The HOA has a responsibility to investigate potential hazards, and I'm here to do that. If everything's fine, you've got nothing to worry about. Now, if you'll just let us take a look." "Absolutely not," I interrupted, stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind me. "You don't have the right to search my property. This is my home, not HOA common ground. If you're so concerned, call the police." Her composure cracked for a second. She clearly wasn't expecting pushback. "David, refusing an inspection only makes this more suspicious. We have the authority to ensure compliance with community regulations." "Authority?" I scoffed. "Carol, you're a volunteer on an HOA board, not a cop. You have no legal authority to enter my property without my permission or a warrant. So unless you have one of those, this conversation is over." Steve and Brenda shifted nervously. Carol, though, wasn't backing down. "David, this attitude isn't helping. If there's nothing to hide, why not just let us in and resolve this quickly?" I crossed my arms. "Because it's my garage, Carol, not yours, not the HOA's. Now, if we're done, I'd appreciate it if you left my property." Carol's face turned red, but before she could explode, Brenda put a hand on her arm. "Perhaps we should discuss this further at the next HOA meeting," she suggested. Carol hesitated, fuming, but finally nodded. "Fine, but this isn't over, David. We'll be following up." I just watched them walk away, shaking my head. The nerve. I wondered who these concerned neighbors were. I got along with everyone on my street, or so I thought. As the day went on, I noticed people giving me strange looks. A couple walking their dog whispered to each other as they passed my house. Another neighbor I barely knew gave me a curt nod and looked away. It was like Carol's accusations had already spread, making me out to be some kind of criminal. It really ticked me off. I decided to ignore it and work on my latest woodworking project. Spent the afternoon in my garage, sanding wood for a new garden bench. The rhythmic sound of the sander was soothing, and I almost forgot about the whole thing. But that evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, a neighbor I sometimes chatted with. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Carol's been talking about you, saying you might have something dangerous in your garage. Thought you should know." My stomach clenched. It wasn't just rumors anymore. Carol was actively trying to turn the neighborhood against me. I thanked Sarah and thought about what to do. This wasn't about my garage anymore. It was about standing up to Carol and her power trip. I wasn't going to back down. That night, I decided to gather information. If Carol wanted a fight, she was going to get one, but on my terms and within the law. My resolve only hardened the following week when things escalated. What started as an unwelcome visit became a full-blown invasion of privacy. Carol wasn't letting this go, and her next move was unbelievable. The next Saturday, I woke up to find my garage door slightly ajar. I'm always careful to close it. I went to check, and my heart sank. There, Inside my garage, rummaging through my stuff, was Carol. Steve and Brenda were with her, hovering awkwardly by the driveway, clearly uncomfortable but not stopping her. "What the hell do you think you're doing in my garage?" I yelled. Carol jumped, then straightened up, clutching her clipboard. "Good morning, David. We're conducting an inspection." "An inspection?" I repeated, incredulous. "You broke into my garage? This is trespassing, Carol. You've crossed a line." She didn't even flinch. She gestured around with her pen. "We've had multiple complaints, David. Neighbors are concerned about what you're storing in here. Chemicals, unusual tools. It's all very suspicious." I took a deep breath, my fist clenched. "First of all, none of this is your business. Second, nothing in here is dangerous or illegal. This is my workshop. I build things. You'd know that if you bothered to ask instead of barging in like a maniac." Steve cleared his throat. "Carol, maybe we should." Carol glared at him, silencing him. "We have the right to ensure the community is safe, David. You're being unnecessarily combative. If you have nothing to hide, why are you so defensive?" I snapped. "Because I'm sick of your power trip, Carol. You don't have the right to invade my property. You don't get to decide what's safe based on your ridiculous assumptions. Now get out of my garage before I call the police." Carol hesitated, then smirked. "Call the police if you want, David. I'm sure they'll be interested in what's going on here." I stared at her, speechless. Brenda finally spoke up. "Carol, maybe we should leave. We've seen enough. If David says everything's fine, we can discuss this at the next HOA meeting." Carol gave Brenda a dirty look, but finally nodded. "Fine," she snapped, closing her clipboard. "But this isn't over, David. You'll be hearing from us." As they left, I stood there, fuming. I couldn't believe what just happened. Carol had violated my privacy and made it clear she wasn't going to stop harassing me. I had to do something. That evening, I called my friend Sam, a property lawyer. "They broke into my garage, Sam," I said, pacing my living room. "They claimed it was for community safety, but they had no right. Carol thinks she's above the law." Sam was quiet for a moment. "You're right, David. What they did violates your rights. HOA rules don't override the law. This could be trespassing, and if she damaged anything, it's even worse." I felt a little better. "So what can I do?" "I can't let them keep doing this." Sam outlined a plan. File a formal complaint with the HOA, detailing Carol's actions and demanding accountability. Send a cease and desist letter warning them against further trespass. If the HOA didn't respond or kept harassing me, I could file a police report and maybe even sue. "Document everything," Sam advised. "Take photos, write down what happened, and get witnesses. The more evidence, the better." I spent the next few hours doing just that. I took pictures of my garage. Nothing seemed damaged or missing, but the fact that she'd been through my things felt like a violation. I wrote a detailed account of what happened, including quotes from Carol and the others. Then I contacted a few neighbors I trusted, hoping for their support. Sarah was especially helpful. She'd seen Carol and the others outside my garage and even taken a photo from her window. "I thought it was weird," she said. "I mean, who just walks into someone else's garage like that? Carol's out of control." I thanked her. With Sarah's photo and my documentation, I felt ready to take on Carol and the HOA. The next day, I sent the complaint and cease and desist letter to the HOA. I also posted it on the neighborhood's online forum. The response was immediate and mixed. Some neighbors were outraged on my behalf, condemning Carol's behavior. Others defended her, saying she was just doing her job and I was overreacting. Carol herself responded online, doubling down. As HOA president, she wrote, "It's my duty to ensure the safety of this community. If that means making tough decisions, so be it. I stand by everything I've done." I reread her post, angry and disbelieving. Her arrogance was unbelievable, but I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. With Sam's guidance and the support of a few neighbors, I prepared for the next battle. I knew this fight was far from over, but I was ready to take it to the next level. The tension between Carol and me exploded after the garage incident. I sent the cease and desist letter, but she didn't back down. She actually seemed to enjoy the drama, acting like she was protecting the community. I was done being nice. My first step was to build my case. The morning after Carol's online rant, I got a knock on my door. A delivery driver handed me an envelope. It was a formal notice from the HOA, signed by Carol, claiming my garage violated unspecified community safety regulations. It demanded I remove any hazardous materials and stop any unauthorized activities within 14 days or face fines of $500 per day. I couldn't believe it. No specifics, no proof, just vague threats. I was furious, but I forced myself to stay calm. I knew Carol's tactics were bogus, and I would prove it. I called Sam immediately. "They've lost it," I said, pacing my living room. "They're threatening me with fines now." "For what?" "Carol didn't even say what I'm supposedly violating." Sam's voice was calm. "Classic intimidation tactic, David. They're hoping you'll cave without questioning them. But this actually helps you. It's more evidence of their overreach." I felt a flicker of hope. "So what do we do now?" "We formally respond to the notice," Sam said. "We demand specific details of the alleged violation and remind them that fines imposed without evidence are unenforceable. Second, I think it's time to escalate. File a police report for trespassing. What Carol did in your garage crossed a legal line." I agreed. Later that day, I went to the police station and filed a report. I told the officer how Carol entered my property without permission and went through my things. "This isn't the first complaint we've had about overzealous HOAs," the officer said. "But entering your garage without consent is definitely a problem. We'll investigate." I left the station feeling a little better, but still frustrated. The police report was a start, but I knew it wouldn't stop Carol. I needed more allies. I spent the next few days talking to my neighbors, starting with those I trusted, like Sarah, who'd taken the photo. I discovered that Carol's bullying was a pattern. Several neighbors shared stories of harassment, unwarranted inspections, bogus fines, and public shaming for minor things. The Martins, an elderly couple, said Carol fined them $1,000 for a garden trellis that didn't match community aesthetics. Another neighbor, Jake, said Carol tried to force him to move his RV from his driveway, even though it was allowed. It was clear Carol's leadership was about control, not community. Armed with these accounts, I decided to take things up a notch. I created a detailed dossier outlining Carol's actions, including witness statements, photos, and a timeline. I included the HOA's vague violation notices in my cease and desist letter. The dossier was damning. Meanwhile, Carol kept stirring the pot online, spreading rumors about me, even accusing me of endangering the community with reckless and potentially illegal activities. Her post gained traction with a small but vocal group, creating more division in the neighborhood. I decided to take the high road. Instead of arguing online, I focused on transparency. I hosted a neighborhood meeting in my backyard, inviting everyone, supporters and skeptics alike. The turnout surprised me. Almost 30 people showed up, including some who had sided with Carol before. I presented the dossier, walking everyone through the evidence. I showed them my garage, nothing but woodworking tools and gardening supplies. I shared the police report. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. "I'm here to stand up for what's right." Carol and the HOA board have overstepped their bounds, not just with me, but with many of you. This isn't about following rules, it's about abuse of power. The crowd murmured in agreement. Neighbors started sharing their own stories about Carol. The Martins talked about the trellis incident. Jake described his RV dispute. Even some of Carol's former supporters admitted she'd gone too far. By the end of the meeting, I'd won over most of the attendees. We drafted a petition to remove Carol as president and review the board's practices. Almost everyone signed. The petition gained momentum. Within a week, we had enough signatures to trigger a special HOA meeting. Carol, realizing she was losing support, doubled down on her rhetoric, claiming the community was being misled. But her words rang hollow. People were seeing through her. At the special meeting, tensions were high. Carol gave a defensive speech, accusing me of lying and undermining the HOA. But when it was my turn, I let the evidence speak for itself. I handed out copies of the dossier and calmly refuted her claims. The final blow came when Sarah presented her photo of Carol outside my garage, along with the police report. The room went silent. Carol turned red, speechless for once. The vote was a landslide. Carol was removed as president. The board agreed to review the bylaws and add safeguards against future abuses. I went home that night feeling relieved. The fight was long and tiring, but it was worth it. Standing in my garage, surrounded by my tools and projects, I smiled. My sanctuary was safe, and so was my community. Carol's reign was over. The aftermath was like the calm after a storm. The neighborhood could finally relax. People who'd lived in fear of Carol's arbitrary rules could finally feel at home. But I knew the work wasn't finished. Carol was gone, but the system that allowed her abuses to happen still needed fixing. The next day, Linda, one of the board members who'd initially supported Carol, knocked on my door. She looked awkward, holding a stack of papers. "Hi, David," she said hesitantly. I wanted to apologize. I didn't agree with how Carol handled things, but I didn't speak up either. "That's on me." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "It takes courage to admit that, Linda. I hope this is a chance for us to move forward." She handed me the papers, a draft of proposed changes to the HOA bylaws. "The board wants to fix this," she said. "We're going to make things right, but we could really use your input." I was surprised and vindicated. "I'd be happy to help," I said. Over the next few weeks, I worked with Linda, Steve, and others to overhaul the HOA rules. We focused on transparency, making sure all decisions were documented and approved by a majority. We added clauses to prevent unwarranted inspections, limit fines, and give homeowners more ways to appeal decisions. During these meetings, I saw a different side of Linda and Steve. Steve admitted he'd often felt pressured by Carol. She was relentless, he confessed. But that doesn't excuse us going along with it. "I'm sorry, David." With these changes, the neighborhood started to heal. The petition to remove Carol had done more than just oust her. It had brought us together. People who'd avoided each other for fear of HOA scrutiny started connecting. Neighbors helped each other with yard work, organized potlucks, and even started a community garden, which I was thrilled to help build. Carol's departure wasn't graceful. She tried to hold on, posting angry rants online, accusing me of a smear campaign. But her support dwindled. More and more residents came forward with their own stories, and Carol was left isolated. Eventually, she sold her house and moved, but not before sending a bitter email to the new board, accusing us of destroying the community. We ignored it. Life returned to normal for me. My garage, once the center of controversy, became my sanctuary again. I got back to my woodworking, building benches, birdhouses, even a custom trellis for the Martins. Every time I went into the garage, I felt proud, not just of my home, but of my victory. One evening, as I was sanding wood, Sarah stopped by. We'd become close friends through all this. "Busy as always," she teased. I smiled. "Always something to keep my hands busy." "What brings you by?" "I wanted to thank you," she said, her tone serious. "Not just for standing up to Carol, but for bringing this neighborhood together. Things feel different now. Better." I put down my sander. "I didn't do it alone. If you hadn't taken that photo, who knows how things would have turned out." She waved it off. "Maybe. But you were the one who stood your ground when it mattered." That inspired people. I felt a wave of gratitude. The fight had been exhausting, but hearing her words made it all worthwhile. The new HOA bylaws were officially adopted a month later. The board even had an open house to celebrate, inviting everyone to learn about the updated rules and share ideas for future projects. I went, not as a leader or activist, but as a neighbor. People thanked me for my perseverance, for showing them that change was possible. Later, Linda approached me with a proposal. "David," she said, "the board has been talking, and we think you'd be a great addition. We'd love for you to join us." I hesitated. After everything, joining the HOA board seemed ironic. But looking around at the smiling faces of my neighbors, I realized it was a chance to make a real difference. "All right," I said. "Count me in." As the months passed, I became an active board member, using my experience to ensure the HOA was fair and transparent. My leadership helped transform our neighborhood into a true community, built on trust and respect. The scars left by Carol faded, replaced by optimism and unity. My journey from quiet homeowner to community advocate wasn't something I planned, but it was something I embraced. Standing in my garage one evening, I reflected on how far we'd come. The space, once a symbol of conflict, was a sanctuary again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.